You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network. This is the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of Thunderquack Podcast Network, where anything can happen. So strap yourselves in and hold on to your butts. It's Thunderquack time!
Hello and welcome back to the Thunderquack Podcast, the official podcast of thunderquack.com, which you can get early every Tuesday over at patreon.com/thunderquack, or you can wait and get it late every Friday on podcast services across the galaxy. I am one of your hosts, Michael Cohen.
And I'm your other host, Amanda Conkin.
And I'm your third host for the week, Kyle Avery.
Yay.
Yeah, we've got Kyle on the episode this week coming in because we're gonna switch it up a little bit. We're gonna do it a little different. So we're not really gonna talk news because I don't think that there's any news that we really want to talk about other than the news that we're gonna talk about. So we're gonna start with our what have you been watching, and then obviously we'll have our ad break and we'll get into the main topic, which we're going to talk about Chadwick Boseman. We're going to talk about Black Panther, and we're gonna get into all of that stuff. So, cool. Before we do that, Amanda, what have you been watching?
I, in true Amanda fashion this summer, have not been watching anything new, but I've been watching a lot of old stuff. I actually rewatched Deathly Hallows this weekend. I don't know why. I just felt like watching Harry Potter, I guess. I let cable television tell me what to watch, and what was it? The Creatures one, the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was on, and then I didn't want to watch it with commercials, and so instead I went to Netflix, and Netflix said, well, why don't you just watch Harry Potter? So I did. So I basically am just rewatching old stuff. So yeah. I rewatched Harry Potter, and
it's good that you chose to watch Harry Potter instead of watching the not Harry Potter movies, which are the Fantastic Beasts movies.
I mean, yes, that's fair.
In this house, we just pretend like they don't exist.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of cute. I kind of like.
No.
Anyways,
they're awful.
All right.
They're very bad movies.
All right.
Not so Fantastic Beasts.
They're not so fantastic. And then of course I obviously rewatched Black Panther this weekend as well. And then because I had to, I then watched Infinity War and then also the last act of Endgame because
you just jumped right to him.
Mostly just because that's the best part. Yeah. Like starting from when Iron Man and Thor and Captain America are fighting Thanos until the very end. But it also was in fit the Chadwick Boseman narrative. So that's the stuff that I caught up on this weekend, was just rewatching old stuff. But it was nonetheless, it was pretty fun. So,
Cool.
That's it. I'm very unentertaining this summer as we've got. I actually also reread. Remember how I talked to you about The Host? And how I had read it a while ago and then watched the movie? I also reread that this weekend because I literally, something's wrong with my brain and I just can't focus on new things. And I just am consuming old things and trying to decide what kind of fan fiction I would write if I were to write fan fiction about this novel. Because, shocking nobody, there's not very good fan fiction on the internet about Stephenie Meyer's The Host. So if anybody has good fan fiction that they can direct me to, please let me know.
Kyle, you got any good fan fiction for The Host recommendations?
I'm the wrong guy to be asking for that.
Kyle's like, I don't even know what that is.
I do know, actually.
Oh, you do?
But I will,
okay.
Vaguely. I mean, from what I've heard, Stephenie Meyer is the one writing fan fiction, but I don't know. I'm not an expert on the topic. She
is the thing with fan fiction, and this is of Stephenie Meyer's work, is that it's like a lateral move, right? And I'm not saying anything. I actually did quite enjoy the Twilight. I was the demographic for that book, so I enjoyed it unironically. But there's a lot of good Twilight fan fiction that exists because it's easy enough to imitate that style and those characters. So there's actually quite an interesting online world. Like some stuff that I've actually read that's novel length and quite entertaining because that was the specific genre that I was looking for. So I actually find it interesting that there isn't any fan fiction in this same, because it's the same kind of like soapy book, right? And anyways, it just seems like it would be rife with fan fiction, and it is not, or at least nothing that is entertaining for me. But yes, anyways, sorry, that's I just keep talking about the same things all summer. So I'm glad that Kyle is here. This is all new for you. You don't have to listen to it like multiple times.
Kyle, what have you been watching lately?
Well, it's funny, you guys were talking about the Umbrella Academy earlier, and I actually just finished the first season a couple weeks ago. And it's funny because you were talking about with the comics on the intro segment or whatever, talking about it being kind of unique and hard to get into. And for whatever reason, because I first started watching the show back when it came out, like last summer. And it's weird, it's different, but I liked it a lot, and I just kind of like the vibe that they're going for. And but for whatever reason, I never got all the way through it. I think I started it a couple of times and only got through the first like 3 episodes. And so finally this summer I was like, you know what, I'm gonna finish this. I think my wife was out of town or something, and I just powered through like 5 or 6 episodes in a weekend, and finally got through the whole first season. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. Definitely wasn't expecting the cliffhanger at the end, so I'm glad I don't have to wait a whole year to watch season 2. I haven't jumped into that yet, but it was fortuitously timed. It's pretty much the only newish thing I've been watching. We've been rewatching Chuck, which is one of my favorite shows that I haven't watched in a while. Yeah. I've been watching that with my wife. We just watch that, we'll watch 1 or 2 episodes a night while we're eating dinner or whatever. She's never seen it all the way through. And I've seen it all the way, but it's been a while. But that's one of my favorites. So that's been fun.
Cool.
I haven't thought about Chuck in forever. I feel like maybe got like 3 seasons in. I feel like how many seasons are there? Are there like 5 seasons? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's 5.
Yeah, I don't think I got further than the first 3 seasons. So
I think it's got one of those writer's strike seasons though, doesn't it? One of those like one season is randomly 13 episodes instead of.
No, I think the first season is like either 13 or 16, just because it was like, they didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not.
Yeah.
It was after the writer's strike, because or I think it was, well, now I'm not sure. What year did that start? It was like 2007. Maybe it was shortened by the writer's strike, but I also know it was one of those shows that was just like constantly on the bubble, like kept getting canceled, and then fans would petition, and then they bring it back, and it would like, I think I think the 3rd season was originally only going to be 13 episodes, and then they extended it, and so it's like there's like a mid-season finale where like the bad guy dies, but then they bring him back because they had to make the season long.
I hate that. It's the worst, where they can't, like, they don't get to follow through with something because they weren't sure, and then they didn't know what to do, and then I don't know.
Yeah.
We used to talk about that all the time on Arrow, how they really would have benefited from 13 episode seasons.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to write all this stuff in the middle.
I agree with that.
What you were talking about for Umbrella Academy is one of my absolute favorite things. When you start watching something late and enough new stuff has come out that it's like perfect. That's what happened to me with Lucifer. That I caught it like right at the tail end of all the hype, and when it had just gotten canceled and then repicked up by somebody else, so that I got on the train of it, like not wanting it to go away right at the same time that everybody else had. So.
Oh, nice.
But it's good. No, that's one of like the best unexpected things about catching up late on television, that you're like, oh, it's good. It's very satisfying. I hope you enjoy season 2. It's fun.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. Cool. I feel like I didn't really watch anything other than I watched the 3rd episode of Lovecraft Country, which after the second episode ended, and you're kind of like, okay, you guys kind of wrapped up a lot of the story threads. Where does it go from here? And then they pick it up in the 3rd episode, and they're like, oh, we just go wherever we want. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. We're just gonna keep telling some spooky Lovecraftian type stories. So, and it was, I think what they're going for, and I'll know more after the 4th episode airs, is they're going for kind of like an anthology without anthologizing, where it's like you have your characters, your 2 lead characters, and a few supporting ones that are gonna carry through the whole season, and there's like an overarching kind of a mystery, or MacGuffin, really, more than a mystery, But each episode or each couple of episodes will have their own little self-contained stories. So the episode that aired this week, the third episode, was very much its own horror movie, like its own, like it's like a haunted house type story, and it was like very self-contained and beginning, middle, and end, but it is part of the larger narrative of the series, which I'm actually really enjoying about it, and it's really, really well made. It's weird to me that more people aren't talking about it. I don't know why it hasn't found an audience. Maybe just the horror aspect of it.
It might have found an audience that's not a super vocal audience. Like, I feel like people are watching it, but they're not necessarily the people that are talking about it on the internet, right? But what you're talking about, though, too, is I feel like that's what made Supernatural, the first season, successful, is because it was standalone horror stories that fit within a larger narrative. Like, I think that's like very specific about like that horror sort of television genre trope. I don't know. That makes sense. It sounds like, because you can step in and sort of, it's the kind of audience that's going to attract people week to week rather than people that are going to be like diehard viewers.
It's not quite as MOW as something like Supernatural or Smallville. But like it there's a little bit of an element of that, but honestly, like, I think you'd lose a lot if you came into the third episode and it's like, because there's a lot of them talking about like what happened in the first two episodes of you're just like trying to go about your life now that we're back, but we haven't even talked about what happened in the woods, and it's like that it would be a really annoying mystery element to it, where it's like, it's not really a mystery, you just missed the first two episodes, right? So it's very clear that like, hey, you missed out by not watching these first two. So it is very much serialized, but it doesn't have the Lost J.J. Abrams signature Game of Thrones, like, we're gonna end this episode by making you want to watch the next episode immediately. And like, that's also like the binge worthy thing, right? So yeah, I'm like, Umbrella Academy is actually a really great example of that, where like every episode of that basically ends and you're like, I need to watch the next one right now. Even including the last episode of each season, where you're like, okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Season 2 is going to do that to me all over again.
100%.
That's why I haven't jumped in and binge watched the entire season yet.
That's fair.
Take your time.
The longer I wait, the less time I'll have to wait for season 3.
Is it announced yet? Has it been announced? Or do you think they're going to do it? Netflix has a tendency to not renew stuff, and it makes me mad.
I don't know if they've announced a season 3
I
yet.
don't think it's been announced. And I'm really,
because
I'm paying attention.
It'll be fine. It's a big one.
Every time I turn on Netflix, the first thing I check is to make sure that it's still trending in the top 10. So that I'm like, okay, Netflix, the show is popular, renew it. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's all good. So yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just gonna keep recommending Lovecraft Country. I think it's a fantastic show, and everybody should be watching it. I'm so hard pressed. I can't think of what else I was watching over the last little bit. I mean, like, we watched a bunch of cartoons and stuff like that over the weekend with the girls, but obviously on Friday, I don't think anybody is surprised that I watched Bill and Ted. Now that was also the day that Chadwick Boseman died, and so I know a lot of people were jumping in and watching Black Panther or 42 or any of the other, like, there's a handful of awesome movies that you can watch featuring him. But for me, it was like, I was bummed. Like it hit hard, and I was really bummed out. So I was like, no, now I have to watch Bill and Ted. Like, I needed the escape.
That's
and it delivered so hard. It's great. It is a fantastic movie. The end kind of fizzled a little bit for me, but only because it was the whole thing is a build up to a moment, and then I think that the moment could have just been a little bit better, but at the same time, like they did exactly what they should have done. I think that it may have just been, I think the biggest thing is the music just wasn't there, which is an ironic thing because it's called Face the Music, and it's about them writing the song that unites it unites reality across time and space. And I do not consider it a spoiler that yes, they are successful. Like, foregone conclusion. It would be a really shitty movie if it didn't. I don't usually swear on the podcast. That one was warranted. Yeah, that would be an awful thing to do in 2020. Is to be like, here's this movie about hope and uniting reality, and it's like, no, they lose at the end and reality is destroyed. So yeah, they win,
but nobody would have saw it coming.
It's anyways,
it'd be about par for the course in 2020.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah. But that's really not like it's, like I said, it's a foregone conclusion, but that's not really the point. There are some more twists and turns to it that make it a lot of fun. It is a very, very good movie. It's really, really well done. It's Dean Pariseau, I think, who is the director of Galaxy Quest. For those who need a little bit of bona fide on that director, Galaxy Quest being the best Star Trek movie ever, even though it's not actually a Star Trek movie, but it is 100% the best Star Trek movie ever made. And one of the funniest movies of all time. I like, it's up there. I consider Galaxy Quest up there with like Ghostbusters and I don't know, like the early Adam Sandler stuff. And like if you want like a movie that's just like you are going to laugh from the start to the end. And Bill and Ted, although not quite hitting that peak, because Galaxy Quest is a little bit mean-spirited, so it can be a little bit. For me personally, I guess this is a personal taste thing. Like, those mean-spirited jokes, I think, can punch a little bit harder. They can be a little bit funnier.
It's such a good Alan Rickman flick, though, too.
Oh my God.
Like,
likewise, Bill and Ted has a great cast. Not quite as good as Galaxy Quest. I mean, like, you've got Tim Allen at the top of his game. You've got Sigourney Weaver playing against type, to type. Like it's because it's so good, because that movie is so good. And then you've got Alan Rickman, you've got Sam Rockwell, Tony Shalhoub. Like, come on, like. You've got Justin Long in like his first major role. Galaxy Quest is powerhouses from top to bottom, and then on top of it, the effects and like Galaxy Quest is one of the best genre comedies of all time. Bill and Ted Face the Music was never gonna hit that height, but in terms of like the Bill and Ted movies, it is absolutely what a sequel to the Bill and Ted franchise in 2020 should be, and they execute it perfectly. It's so good. The time travel stuff is good. Because one of the things that people always or not always, I guess at the time, really like took the franchise to task for was it like the first movie is about time travel, right? And then the second movie isn't about time travel. Like there's very little time travel in it. There is time travel, but there's very little of it. It's actually about them going to hell and then going to heaven and then coming back and saving the day. Like defeating death in a game of Battleship and saving the day, right? Like that's
These
the
movies
bogus
are so
journey.
weird when you describe them out loud.
Yeah, they're awesome. I personally like that it switches it up in the second one, but I think that a lot of people in 1991 were put off by it because they thought that they were going to one thing. The great thing about Face the Music is that it takes the time travel and it takes the heaven and hell stuff and it brings it all together. So you actually like there's a lot of time travel. You go to hell. It's in the trailer, so that's not I don't think that's a spoiler. and you have to, because they got to find death. So, because he's such an important character in the franchise. Played by William Sadler, by the way, who Amanda, you might remember from Roswell.
Yeah.
And
William Sadler, go with them.
Yeah, and he's so good as Death.
Did he play the original Death?
Yeah.
First? Oh, no way.
Again, like there's an actor playing against type, because he's so often
that is not something that I
like a dramatic, usually an antagonist of some kind. But yeah, man.
Have you ever seen? Okay, I'm not going to actually talk about it, but have you ever seen Kinsey?
No.
Anyways, it's there. It's, I guess, I don't even know who Kinsey was, but basically, like, the movie is just like it's like about like the science in like investigating sex in different ways, because Kinsey did something that was like that. But there's a character that William Sadler plays that just always in my brain, like, because he masturbates on screen, and that's like all. Whenever I think of William Sadler, I think of that specific. Like, it's just so visceral.
That really, that's not gonna work for you when you're watching Roswell. I know that's gonna mess up watching Roswell, because you're like, I'm supposed to take you seriously. You're supposed to be the biggest threat in the show.
Yeah.
Or at least for the first few seasons. Like any teen drama show, the bad guy will eventually become a good guy if the show goes for long enough. Not that he was ever really the bad guy. He was just the sheriff. He's just trying to do his job. But, of course, in today's context, ACAB, right? But but yeah, anyways, not to get too off on that tangent. That absolutely works for his portrayal of Death, and I think that will enhance your viewing experience with that character. You do need to watch these movies. I think that you will get something out of them.
The internet is finally telling me to watch them, because it's or that, and also the Back to the Future ones, because Netflix keeps recommending them to me. So it's like, clearly I've got to step it up.
Wait, is Back to the Future back on Netflix?
It's Canadian Netflix.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there
are very few times that it is pretty awesome to be Canadian. I mean, I do like being Canadian, but there are a bunch of things that sometimes it really sucks that we don't get stuff on Netflix, but other times we get stuff on Netflix, and it's like pretty sweet. So that is one of the.
I always forget that. Like, that's not the first time I've been like talking to Mike about something, and he says like, "Oh, it's on Netflix," and I'm like, "Wait, what? That's on Netflix?" And I forget that he's in a different country.
Yeah. But yeah, that's basically what I watched in the last little bit. And you know, lots of Paw Patrol and Bluey and all that stuff. But cool. Well, with that, I think we'll take a break for ads, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Chadwick Boseman. Okay, so let's get into our main topic. But before we do, let's just take a quick second to thank our Patreon supporters. You can become a Patreon supporter by heading over to patreon.com/thunderquack and kicking in with your pledge. I'm actually I haven't set it up yet. Maybe by the time that I post this, no, probably not. But soon after, I over the next week or so, I'm gonna set up the annual subscription, so you can actually just pay for your whole year all at once, which is a new feature for Patreon. So you get a whole year of early access for $12. It'll actually be cheaper because there'll be a discount. I don't know. I have to look at it and figure it out. But so on the next episode, I'll have actual details on that. But so you get the whole year for less than $12. What's 5 times 12? Is that 60? Yeah. So you get the whole year of ad-free episodes for less than $60. I guess it's $10 a month would be $120. You guys are crazy, the people that support us, and I mean that in the sense that like it's like you guys are awesome to support us, because when you put it into those terms, it's like cool. People who spend $120 in a year supporting us. So you'll be able to do that and get bonus. I'm also gonna set up I have to look into it again. Like, there's so much stuff on Patreon now that it takes time to set it up, but they also do merch through Patreon now. So I'm gonna look at it and see what it is. Like, it's basically like fulfillment. So if you want to do like a T-shirt or whatever, that happens through Patreon. And what I'll do,
we could bring back the quarterly, but it could be like shirts.
Yeah, well, it's
this is
kind of
why
like,
you don't let me do Patreon.
Yeah, we'll have like an exclusive shirt or an exclusive piece of merch that'll only be available on Patreon. So when we come back in a couple of weeks, because we're gonna take next week off, when we come back in a couple of weeks, I'll have set that stuff up, and we'll have more details about that. But for now. Just a general thank you to our Patreon supporters, but specifically to Brian Murawski and JJ Samuel, our Patreon producers. You can become a Patreon producer as well if you go to patreon.com/thunderquack, and like $20 a month, or there'll be a yearly on that one as well. Yeah. So it'll all be annual.
And we have so many producers. It's like how real movie investing works, or like investing as producers. You just pay a bunch of money up front, and then it's good.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I never really jump in with the thank yous, and I have to say that like it's really nice to know that people still want to listen to us talk on the internet, because I mean, we had done this for so long with Quiver, and it is a thing that still people are like, well, you still podcast, but Arrow's done, and I was like, yeah, but people still listen, and they're like, well, what do you talk about? And I'm like, not a lot. So I do enjoy like knowing that there's people out there that still want to listen to us chat, and even the after show. I have to say that it started out as just like that was like our warm up. It was just like, it's just like how Mike and I talk, and I think that's pretty cool that that's now just something that people get as extra, because it's just how we work and come up with cool little chats about comics and stuff before we get into it. So anyways, thank you everybody for supporting us. And I hope you continue to do so. And I'm excited to see what Mike has in store for you with the new Patreon setup. So thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Let's get into our main topic. So I mean, like, I don't think that it's a surprise to anybody. I don't think that we're breaking the news on this one. On Friday, we learned that Chadwick Boseman, people use the term that like he lost his fight with cancer, but I would say, considering all of the incredible movies and performances he handed in while he was fighting cancer, he kicked cancer's ass, and then I think just eventually ran out of juice. But he passed away from a fight with colon cancer, which was a big surprise to everybody, because he kept it very, very secret. And in fact, so secret that Ryan Coogler, who directed Black Panther and was gearing up to direct Black Panther 2, found out when we found out, which I was very surprised by, because you would think that's the sort of thing that he would tell at least like Kevin Feige and Ryan Coogler, so that they could potentially schedule around things. But I guess he wanted to keep it private, and his personal circle, the people who supported him and did know, are amazing people, because that's a heck of a secret to keep, and for that to not leak, to not get out over the course of 4 years as he's becoming one of the biggest stars in Hollywood is just astounding to me. But obviously hugely upsetting, as I talked about before. Like it I think it hit a lot of us really hard. I think because it was so unexpected. I think that's a big part of it, but also because just because of like the incredible talent and that just instant presence that he had, not just as T'Challa, not just in Black Panther, but in the other movies that he did. He's an incredibly talented person. And so it's just one of those things where it's like all of a sudden, you know, it's like I'll put it this way. If Harrison Ford died tomorrow, I would be upset. I would be really upset. But I would also be like, yeah, well, he's in his late 70s, right? Like he's getting up there. It wouldn't be entirely unexpected. but 43. That's cut awfully short. So yeah, I don't know. That's I guess the news part of it. How do you guys want to get into this? You want to talk about Black Panther specifically? Do you want to talk about any of the other movies that he did? I guess for us it's mostly focused on Black Panther, right?
Well, and a lot of what I'm interested. I mean, it's so great to have you on the podcast, Kyle. I think it's really awesome that like Mike and I are constantly sort of being like, what is it that we want to talk about? We want to talk about stuff that's important and stuff that sort of like matters to us. And I think that was there, like for Mike to message and be like, Kyle wants to be on the podcast on Monday. I was like, that is great. I'd love to just give you an opportunity to really talk, because I think what, like for me, my connection with Black Panther is, or with Chadwick Boseman, is very much Black Panther and how he is, as Mike is saying, one of these like rising stars. And the biggest shock of this news for me is my brain just goes to all those places that are pedantic, right? And like how, like the secret nature of it and what he would have been going through and how he dealt with that in silence or on his own with his own close circle. But I am really interested, that impulse to be like, I want to come on this podcast and talk about it. I do kind of want to let you take the floor a little bit and just be here for whatever kind of things you want to talk about.
All right, yeah, and I mean, I appreciate you guys letting me kind of crash the party on this one. I mean, I think really the main reason I wanted to jump on here and talk about it. Actually, Mike, you kind of gave me the idea, like, and obviously this was Friday night when we first found out, and everybody was, posting about it on social media and stuff, and I was, kind of like sharing a lot of other people's tweets and posts and stuff that were really well worded, and was just kind of at a loss for words myself, and wanted to find a way to kind of express myself and how I was feeling about this. And I don't know about you guys, I get kind of self-conscious with like posting on social media about that kind of stuff, because I don't want to feel like I'm doing it just because everybody else is doing it, and like I want to, say something meaningful, but like not copy what other people are saying or whatever. And so I don't know, I was feeling kind of weird about it. And Mike, I saw something that you tweeted about, just like not judging people based on how they're dealing with grief, and how, it's weird when celebrities die, because like you don't know them in person. Like it's not the same as losing a family member or somebody that you've actually, had as a friend or somebody like in your life in person, but it can still affect you. And I was like, hey, what the heck? Like, let's talk about that. Like, I think doing a podcast would be a good way to just, kind of be able to get your thoughts out, maybe ramble a little bit if you need to. But, you don't have to perfectly succinctly sum up everything you're feeling in one tweet. It's just, to kind of have a conversation with people and just kind of get those thoughts out. I thought would be a good way to go. So
that tweet you're talking about is actually how I found out. Mike posted that tweet about people dealing, and because that's, I think, very important and poignant to sort of be like, people are gonna deal with things in their own way, and that we just as an internet culture are not the greatest at just letting people express themselves. And so I was really interested in that, but obviously in my brain I was like, well, what happened? And then when I logged into Facebook to sort of see like what people were talking about, Mike was the first post that I also saw where he mentioned Chadwick Boseman. So I like that so thank you, Mike, for posting stuff like that on the internet. I think that it's important to start conversations. And I mean, I'm someone that I didn't know what to say either. I don't really use my social media that often for anything of importance. So I like that you're tweeting a lot with that, and that there is this platform to then be able to just sort of express things that you otherwise can't, I don't know, find the words for, I guess, in different mediums. So
yeah, I guess for those who didn't see the tweet, but essentially what I said was like just kind of ignore people who are going to try and gatekeep your mourning, your grief on a subject like this, because every time somebody famous dies, there is and granted, there are a lot of opportunistic people who are going to try and take advantage of it. Screen Rant immediately posted like what's going to happen in Black Panther 2, and it's like, guys, that like within an hour They posted that.
Wow.
And then they took it down, and then they made a statement, but the statement was definitely not good enough. Because it was in such poor taste. So that stuff's going to happen. But I think, as is the case with a lot of internet culture and a lot of cancel culture right now, you get a lot of people gatekeeping and saying things like, essentially kind of what you were saying, Kyle, of like, well, you don't know the person, so what are you even, like, what are you griping about? What are you upset about? Like, you don't have any right to be upset. And my point was, like, no, people are gonna grieve, and as long as it's respectful, like, as long as you do it, and to me, respectful means you take a step back, you think about it, and you try and be sensitive to sort of like the degrees of effect, right? Obviously, the people that knew him and loved him in a personal way are going to be the most deeply affected by it. So things like giving his family their privacy and allowing them the room to deal with it is the first and foremost. And then, like his colleagues and stuff like that, like letting them kind of have the floor and talk about their experiences. But look, like, Black Panther was a big deal. That movie was a huge deal. I think that it was a cultural turning point. I don't know that what is happening right now with Black Lives Matter and the immediate response with George Floyd, like, there's no way for us to know what effect Black Panther directly has on something like that. But I am very confident in saying it had an effect, right? The ease with which more people flocked to a movement like Black Lives Matter this time around, as opposed to the first time that Black Lives Matter became a movement, I think is a direct result of movies like Black Panther making a lot of these issues into approachable, digestible entertainment, right? And like, you can find a bunch of instances of Chadwick Boseman actually talking about it on that level. That's kind of the point, is that it's a story that people are going to get into because it's a Marvel movie, but it has the capacity. He talked about this a lot in the lead up to it when they were making it, sort of in between Civil War and Black Panther, that it had the potential, that there's this responsibility and this weight that it was gonna that it had the potential to really affect people and change the way that they think. So stuff like T'Challa's accent was really important to him, because he kind of had a sense, even when a lot of other people didn't, that this character was going to mean something. And I think ultimately that's why he did. And so Black Panther, T'Challa, obviously the MCU is a major part of our current pop culture zeitgeist. All of that stuff means that a lot of people are going to be directly affected by this, right? So it's definitely, like, you can't discount that, and you can't tell people that they aren't actually grieving something, because there is a loss, there is something major there that I think is real, that I think that people have to deal with and they have to process. But as long as you do it in a respectful way, I think that it's okay. Like, I think that's the most important part of it. So, I don't know, like I posted that, and then I don't remember if I posted my story before or after that, but I posted a story about going to Disneyland, in 2018. So it was like a couple years after Black Panther. Not a couple years after Black Panther, a couple years after Civil War. Civil War, Black Panther, and Infinity War had all come out. So Endgame was last year. So like obviously Black Panther is a big deal, and they had Black Panther at California Adventure over by the Marvel area, what is now the Marvel area, but or I guess when it opens up again it will be the Marvel area. So there's a photo op, so we get in line to do the photo op, and Crystal and Kara do not care. They're not. It's not that they don't care, but like they just like they're not as interested in a picture with Black Panther. But I was really excited about it. Like I was like hyped up about it, and the whole time I'm in the line and I'm thinking like, and I think I even said something to Crystal of like I can't do the Wakanda forever, right? Like that's that. Like I'm a white guy. That's a. That belongs to somebody that is not me, to put a nice fine point on it, right? Like that's, I don't want to be appropriating something, right? And we get up to the front of the line and go over to, and I'm watching everybody that goes before me, like who's doing what. How are the different people interacting or whatever, and it finally gets to me and I go up and Black Panther strikes like an attack pose, like he's got like a classic like superhero but with the claws out, right? And so I just go, okay, cool, that's what we're doing. So I just mirrored him, and it was awesome, and we took our picture, and it was really cool because that's a perfect costume because all you can see is his eyes, right? So it's like the guy standing next to me looks like the Black Panther. As opposed to like when you meet Captain America and it's like that's not Chris Evans,
right?
Right? It's like yeah, you got a real handsome, real jacked guy, but it's clearly not Chris Evans. So it's like the characters like Spider-Man and Black Panther. I think you get like a little bit of extra immersion because you can't see their face, right? So like I was really giddy about it and kind of like caught up in the moment. And as we're finishing this interaction, he turns to me and he crosses his arms and does the Wakanda Forever thing. And I just like reflexively did it back and then walked away and was like, I hope that was okay. Like I hope like, but like I think because he initiated it, I was like I think I'm in the clear here. Like I wasn't like being a weird white guy acting like that's okay.
Martin Freeman does it in the movie when he like explodes the ship. So that's what you were just protecting Wakanda by being the dude.
No,
and if you weren't supposed to do it, he would have wagged his finger at you and said, "We don't do that here."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No, but like, and I'm not saying that like all white people aren't allowed to do that, right? I don't think that that's the case, but it's just like I was just like sensitive to it, right? I was just thinking about it, and so it was a funny moment when it just happened, right? And it's one of those things where it's like it's no different than if I was doing a photo op with Cap, which we did previously, and if he salutes, you salute back. He's Captain America, right? Like if Spider-Man puts his fingers out and does the web fingers, you do the web fingers. Like it's just like it was just this moment where like and reflecting on it in light of Chadwick Boseman's passing, it was very much like that's how quickly this stuff became part of our culture, right? Became a part of the larger culture. Not and because it's MCU and because MCU is such a big deal right now, it permeates everything, right? And as I said in my post, like it's Wakanda Forever is on the level of May the Force be with you or Live Long and Prosper, right? Like and like undeniably it's on that same level of all of the stuff from the MCU. And like I could make a dozen references right now off the top of my head. There isn't a single one of them that is as like culturally adopted as Wakanda Forever, which is so amazing because I think 20 years ago, this would have been seen as like a kitschy niche thing of like, oh, they're doing the black superhero, right? Like if you think about like Blade, right? When Blade came out, that was very much like, oh, he's a different kind of superhero. He's a superhero and he's black and he's a vampire. And it's like, well, okay, Blade's not really a superhero, but he is because he's part of Marvel. But like, so I think that it kind of shows where we're at, where a lot of people are at as a culture. It's very hopeful, I think. In especially in the midst of everything else that's going on right now, it's a great thing to think about. How successful that movie was and how much it changed things. But yeah, I'm still, all these years after the movie has come out, it's still amazing how much that like sticks around and how important that is. And that's from the perspective of a white guy, right? Like that's sort of from the outside looking in. So yeah, I mean, like it's I think in 20 years we'll look at it as a very important movie. It's part of, and it's not, I don't think it's just black culture, African American culture, any of that, like all that stuff. I think it's also like you look at Crazy Rich Asians, and we've got Shang-Chi on the horizon, and I don't think like it's been said by a lot of people, and I totally agree with it and I echo it. We wouldn't be getting Shang-Chi without Black Panther first. Like that's like it definitely has opened the door for that. And that's awesome. That's great. So to me it's like, yeah, Chadwick Boseman just has this incredible legacy, not just as an incredible performer, who did a great job acting, but who was also like an ambassador for the movie, and I mean, like that's something that I think could wear on you really quickly. the everybody like doing the Wakanda Forever salute to you everywhere you go, but I think he always took it in the best way possible, and I think that's admirable. I think that's an incredible thing.
That's the beauty, I think, of what is resonating so much with people, and why there's is that I think that Chadwick Boseman, and this is like the beauty of science fiction and of comic books, is that it creates a world in which we can mirror reality, and Wakanda is a place that belongs to whoever wants to belong there, because it's a fictional world, right?
Yeah.
But it lives within such a present reality, and the problems that are focused on in that movie, and just like Killmonger's like whole being speaks to like conversations that are really important right now, and Chadwick Boseman being able to own that character and be T'Challa and follow through with that. I think he understood the importance of that when he took on that role, and is part of just the monumental sort of impact that he's had on these things that have changed, and what he did to give back to kids. And I know a lot of what people are talking about is how even when he was dealing with cancer himself, that he would go and help kids see the light and see the future in visiting other like sick kids, and making them realize that that he was there, and that there was something to fight for. And I think that that's really cute. And also what I think is important, because I think that you always look and resonate with things from your own experience. And for myself, what I found important about Black Panther is that diversity breeds inclusion, and the female representation on Black Panther in important key creative roles and on screen is unparalleled in any other Marvel movie. And I think that it is a fantastic and important part of that story, and something that really resonates to me, that T'Challa is surrounded by these beautiful, strong women, and it doesn't in any way diminish his character, and he lifts everybody up, and they lift him up, and he's able to be a man that's in love with a woman who makes him stop in his tracks, but it doesn't in any way diminish the strength of his character. And I just think the thing that is so great to me about stories like that is how they just lead, like you're saying, to more stories, to Shang-Chi, to Simu Liu being able to step into the light and allow more representation in different ways. And I just think that is fantastic. And I really am grateful to Chadwick Boseman for being the face of that. And I think he'll be remembered for that for a long time. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you guys were saying, I think that's part of the biggest revelation of all this. Like, it's not like he just died suddenly. It's, it's both grappling with his death, but then also realizing what he was going through this whole time. And even, Mike, you talk about how he kind of never got old of just being that character out in public and being the face of it. It's like, it even kind of recontextualizes some things, because I have seen, like, every once in a while, you might see like a meme or something where he is doing like the Wakanda salute, like on a red carpet or something, and it looks kind of tired. And, I've seen people like joking about that, like, like, it's like, oh, maybe he did get tired of it, or, like, heck, I would probably get tired of that if people came up to me and did that 500 times a day. But now you look back on it, and it's like, well, maybe he wasn't like sick of it. Maybe he's looking all tired and exhausted because he just came from chemotherapy or something like that. Like, yeah. And just thinking of all the stuff he went through, not just the grueling schedule of like filming those movies and the physical demands of it and all that kind of stuff, but then doing the press tours and doing the hospital visits and all the kind of stuff that he did while fighting this battle. I mean, it just shows an incredible amount of strength. And it's so sad to lose him and then find that out at the same time. It's like he was more of a hero and just more of a strong, admirable person than we ever realized, like, while he was here. It's like you almost wish he wasn't dead just so you could like give him credit for that, and give him the appreciation that he deserved. But and you have to wonder, I mean, you talk about how Ryan Coogler talked about he found out at the same time as the rest of us when he died. I mean, I read his whole statement that he shared, and it was really powerful. I would suggest, like, I mean, obviously there's been a lot of tributes from celebrities and stuff, but for anyone that hasn't read it, read Ryan Coogler's statement that he put out, and I think it's in Variety and like a bunch of those magazines and stuff. I don't think he's on social media. And then also just earlier today, Michael B. Jordan released a statement on his social media channels, and I think those are the two most powerful and poignant tributes that I've read from some people who obviously knew him very well. But Ryan Coogler said, like, he said he wasn't privy to the full details of his illness. So I would assume he knew something. I mean, especially like as a director, just knowing like when you can schedule your actor and stuff. I mean, if he was going through treatments and stuff, I'm sure he knew that something was up and maybe knew that he was sick with something or, whatever, but obviously didn't know that it had progressed to the point that it had and didn't know all the full details of it. I even remember hearing some like unconfirmed rumors swirling around the internet, like when some of the next slate of Marvel movies started to be announced and when Black Panther 2 was announced, and there was like rumors going around that Black Panther 2 was going to be T'Challa basically handing the mantle off to Shuri, and having her take over as the Black Panther, which I was like, that's a cool idea, and I would love to see that happen at some point. I think that would be a cool way to continue on the story of that character without Chadwick Boseman being stuck in the role forever. I mean, just like you have kind of Captain America being passed on to Sam Wilson and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, man, like T'Challa is this, hero that everybody loves. Like, we got to have at least a couple more movies with him before you pass it on to somebody else. Like, I was like, man, if this is true, I hope it doesn't happen yet. And now, knowing what we know, I'm like, oh, well, suddenly that holds a lot of weight. And I'm sure maybe the executives at Marvel or whatever knew to some extent what was going on and knew that he probably couldn't continue with this forever. But I don't know. I mean, to me, just, it's his legacy, not even just with Black Panther. I mean, I feel like that's just sort of his crowning achievement after playing like Jackie Robinson and James Brown and Thurgood Marshall, and like, he had already played so many like iconic black men, and then of course topping it off with Black Panther. And it's like, now knowing what we know about everything that he was going through and everything, and just being a hero to so many kids and people around the world and everything, it's like, I'm sure someday we're going to get a movie about him, hopefully somebody on his same level of acting talent and just strength of character can bring that same just sort of strength and dignity that he had and be able to tell his story. If it's one that, they want to be told. I'm sure they'd have to clear that with his family, and him being as private as he was and not even, wanting to share that information. Maybe they don't want to make a movie out of it, and I'd be fine with that too. But I just think, he is a story and a person that deserves to sort of be immortalized like that. And I don't know. I mean, he wasn't just great as T'Challa. I don't know if you guys have seen any of his other movies. I really enjoyed him in 42 as well. And I'm a big baseball fan, so I mean, Jackie Robinson is one of my all-time heroes anyway. And the movie overall, it's a pretty good movie. I mean, it is kind of like standard biopic fare to an extent, but his performance in that is really great. Just Jackie Robinson's story in general is really great. Also, I feel like a highly underrated part of that movie that's like an all-time great performance from Harrison Ford. I think he's fantastic in that movie and doesn't get enough credit for it.
You have sold me, Kyle. I have a weird love of sport biopic movies. Like
Really?
it's so out of character for me, like in terms of
Yeah,
all
very.
of the other stuff that I consume. But I'm going to watch that movie and I'm going to be so excited about it. So thank you for sharing that because I haven't seen it yet, but it's my jam. I absolutely it's such a weird, like side love of movies. So thank you for sharing that. I'm excited.
Oh yeah, no problem. I definitely recommend it. Yeah, Harrison Ford plays like the owner or the manager. I think he's the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers who decides to, take a chance and sign Jackie Robinson and beat the first team in baseball to have a black man play. So, yeah, that's a great movie. I haven't seen him in Get On Up, which is the James Brown movie. But
I haven't seen all of
well, but...
Get On Up, but I have I've watched several clips from Get On Up, and he is like incredible in the clips that I've seen. And it's one of those movies that's like I've never seen it on like a streaming service or anything like that, so it's one that I've missed. But it was, I remember when it came out, I was like, I want to see this. It was very similar to like when The Force Awakens was coming out, and I wanted to know more about everybody that was in The Force Awakens. And I started watching Oscar Isaac stuff and and it got to a point where I'm like, I'll just watch anything that this guy is in. And with Chadwick, it was the same thing. It's like after seeing Civil War, I was like, this guy is so good. He's so good as this character. Like this character comes in and like, when you really think about it, you think about Civil War, he has such little screen time compared to the other characters. And he's disconnected from the actual plot in a certain way, right? Like, because he wasn't an Avenger. He wasn't part of the Sokovia incident, right? He wasn't part of what happened in man, where is it that Scarlet Witch blows the guy up and whatever, it doesn't matter. But like he wasn't a part of that stuff. So he's coming in and it's been a long time since you've watched Civil War, clearly, Amanda. But he comes in and he holds his own against these characters who are, in some instances, like sort of right at the top of their arcs. Like I would say that I Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark in Civil War, it's like where that character is at in that story is a very important turning point for Iron Man, right? And obviously it's a Captain America movie, so you're competing with him. And Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr. Thank goodness Chris Hemsworth's not in that movie because he would pull focus too. But you do have like Paul Rudd comes in and steals the show when he's making his jokes. The first appearance of Spider-Man in the MCU, like Civil War is a packed movie, and yet I think we all walked away from that going like, so when does Black Panther happen? Like when do we get to see more from this character? And for good reason. I mean, like I think he just crushes it as that character from the moment that we first meet him. Like he steps out to make his speech or whatever, and you're just like, okay, yeah, he's on the same level as these other guys. We just haven't met him yet. And so yeah, I definitely walked away from Civil War thinking like, I'll watch anything that Chadwick Boseman does, and I haven't, like, it's one of those things where it's, you just, some movies just kind of come and go and pass you by. Biopics especially, I feel like if you didn't like if it wasn't easy, if it's not like made really accessible, it's really easy for a biopic to happen and just like go. Right. And then you just kind of.
And I feel like unless it's like a person that you're really invested in, like, again, for me, like I went out of my way to go see 42 with my dad because we're both huge baseball fans.
Yeah, for sure.
And obviously, as African Americans, like Jackie Robinson's really important to us. James Brown, like, he's an icon, but I'm not like particularly a James Brown fan. So I saw, the trailers for that and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go see that. But you could tell just from the trailers that Chadwick Boseman absolutely nailed that performance.
Yeah. Yeah. And like a very complicated character, a very complicated person in James Brown, of like a very beloved performer, but a bit of a mess of a human, and kind of famously a complete and total asshole to a lot of people. But so he had to embody that, and what I've seen of that movie, which, like I said, like I think I've seen probably 40% of it just by watching clips over the years on like YouTube and stuff like that. He walks that line, which is really hard, to be charismatic, to be entertaining, and to have that element of it, but then be able to like turn on a dime. I think there's a scene in the movie where they're practicing or whatever, and somebody like suggests something, and he like stops the whole rehearsal, and he's like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And the guy starts saying his name. It's like, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm James Brown. Do it the way I said to do it. And it's like, it's this thing of like, he's being a total jerk, but also like he's kind of got a point. Like, shut up, guy on the trumpet. Just do what you're told, right? Like, just like stop. You're messing up everybody else's rhythm or whatever. And yeah, like that's not an easy character to get and to carry a movie and be likable. So yeah, like he's just his whole career is full of that stuff. 21 Bridges is a really great example of like a movie that I would have zero interest in, just not even remotely care about, but because it's him, I'm like, okay, yeah, I could watch this movie. Like, I could definitely watch this movie. To me, that's like and we don't really live in this era anymore, but that's like a TBS on a Saturday afternoon. I don't have anywhere else to be, and there's nothing else on, so I'll give this a try. Which we don't. Now we live in an on-demand world, so we can watch whatever we want whenever we want it. But in an era past, that's definitely how I would have watched that movie, and I would have enjoyed it. In that context, I am gonna watch The Five Bloods, which is on Netflix.
Same
that's here. I just put that on my list, and I'll watch that. But it's another one of those ones. This is always the hard part for me. I have to find a time to watch it when everybody else is asleep or out, because I don't think Crystal's gonna want to watch it, and I can't watch it in front of the girls. So
I don't know that Spike Lee has ever made a kid-friendly movie.
Yeah, that's not really. But yeah, I mean, like and then we've also just got his incredible performances in the MCU, which obviously we've all watched multiple times and sort of devoured.
I haven't watched Civil War. I think I've maybe watched it once or possibly twice, but it's on my like sort of like now very fragmented Marvel rewatch from this summer. But it's like the one that I'm waiting to like really just be like, I want to sit down and watch this movie. So there's a reason why I haven't watched it in a while, Mike. So I will say that it's because I'm saving it for like last.
I haven't watched Civil War in a long time.
Yeah.
I think Civil War actually might be my favorite MCU movie.
Really?
Yeah.
That's yeah. I mean, like it's basically an Avengers movie, so I get that. Like it's
it really is. But I mean, the introduction of Black Panther is a big part of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I mean, I want to talk for a second about like not even just his performance, but just what that character and that movie means to people, and like him as this, a symbol, an icon. And like Amanda, you were talking about earlier, just like representation and the power of that, and having that type of hero like for young Black kids to look up to. I think is just super important. It's something that like even I maybe didn't quite understand the importance of at first. Because like you almost get tired of hearing about it so much, like the hype leading up to the movie and all the talk about, oh, it's the first black hero in the MCU and blah blah blah. And like, first of all, for me, I actually really like the character of Falcon, and so there was almost something in me that was going like, excuse me, you guys are forgetting the other black hero that's already in there, even though he's like Captain America's sidekick. I love that dude. And if you want to talk in terms of like representation and like kind of seeing yourself on screen, I almost find Falcon to be like a more relatable character because he's just like a regular dude that's just trying to get by. And I can relate to that more than like a king of a country. But like T'Challa is like that icon, like that the ideal to aspire to, not necessarily somebody that you look at and go like, oh, that's me, like I'm in that same circumstance. And he does have some bigger, like broader struggles that we can all relate to, right? Of like having this responsibility thrust on him and not knowing if he's ready for it, but having to kind of take this big step and trust the people around him and face these unknown challenges. But you know, I think again, just having that iconic, you know, superhero for like a generation of especially young black kids, but kids of any, you know, race or age or gender to look up to, is huge. And it's something that I kind of realized more over time, and I'm even realizing more now as I hear more and more stories about Chadwick Boseman and see him going, you know, these videos of him visiting kids in hospitals and seeing all the tributes and stuff that people are posting online. But even for me, like Black Panther is, I love the movie, but it's not my favorite movie in the MCU. He's probably not my favorite hero in the MCU, although he's near the top of my list because I love that character. But I love that character just as a symbol and what he stands for. And, you know, again, I almost love like the symbol of the Black Panther more than like the actual character himself. Like I have 3 bumper stickers on the back of my car. I've got the Jedi Order logo, I've got the Arizona Diamondbacks logo, which is my favorite baseball team, and I've got the Black Panther logo because like around the time that Endgame came out, like I was at a Comic-Con and wanted to get some kind of MCU thing, and they had, you know, all the different stickers. And like Thor has always been my favorite hero in the MCU, but like his hammer logo just looked, you know, it didn't make me think, oh, that's really cool, I got to get it. And I saw they had a silver like outline of Black Panther helmet, and I'm like, that's what I want. So I've got that on the back of my car. I've got a Black Panther t-shirt that I wear all the time. You know, my sister and I do the Wakanda salute to each other all the time. I mean, like Mike, like you were talking about that just becoming a part of our popular culture. And as 2, you know, black kids that grew up loving Star Wars and superhero movies, and we're both huge nerds, like, of course we're going to Wakanda salute each other all the time. That's just like part of what we do now. And actually, so my sister lives with my parents. Like they live a couple hours away from me, and my sister's going to come visit me this weekend, and we're going to watch a bunch of Chadwick Boseman movies. We're probably just going to watch all the MCU ones, you know, Civil War through Endgame. But like my most sort of profound memory of Chadwick Boseman, just sort of the image of him, like the everlasting image of him that's going to be burned in my mind. And the reason this was like such a heavy loss for both of us when we heard that that he had passed, you know, just made me think back to like the opening night of Endgame. You know, we're there with packed out theater, like I'm sure most of us were. Everybody's already, you know, losing their mind a bunch of times during the movie. We've seen, you know, Cap lift the hammer and all that other kind of crazy stuff that goes on in the movie. And then it gets to the part where Cap's, you know, beaten down, the shield's broken, Thanos is there with his huge army, and you're wondering, how is he going to get out of it? And then you hear, you know, my dude Falcon, which, you know, that was already exciting. You know, he comes with the hey Cap on your left, and the portal starts opening, and T'Challa and Shuri and Okoye are the first 3 people to walk out of there. And me and my sister were losing our freaking minds. And of course, part of it is just because you know what's about to go down. You know everybody else is coming out after him, and this is the moment where all the heroes assemble, and, you know, they're going to have the big final showdown. But especially for us, just seeing him be the first one out. And, you know, like, because I'm pretty sure they had filmed this maybe before Black Panther came out, because I think they filmed like Infinity War and Endgame at the same time. So it was probably already like in post-production when Black Panther came out. But, you know, they can rearrange that stuff in the edit and everything, or do reshoots, whatever. And so the fact that they were the first ones to come out, I'm sure was in direct response to that cultural movement of Black Panther and what that meant to people and how huge that movie was. And so, yeah, that was just, you know, we saw him come out and we were like, that's our dude. And when he starts doing, the army comes out behind him and he starts chanting Ibambe, I was chanting right along with him. And, it was just such a cool moment. And it's funny because like people have talked about in interviews and stuff, like, is it like Chadwick Boseman even was wondering, like, this is just a movie. Does it really mean that much to people? But then, just sort of realizing the fact that, yeah, even though it's just a movie and it's fictional, like it still can, inspire people and give people hope and just giving us these heroes to look up to and these moments to enjoy. And he talked about it, likening it to like a kid on Christmas. And you as a kid, it's like a couple months ahead of time, you wake up every morning just looking forward to Christmas and waiting for that to get there. And of course, obviously now, a lot of us adults that are into all this pop culture stuff, still are kids at heart and still feel that same kind of joy and excitement with these characters. So, yeah, it was tough, but I'm definitely glad that we got all the stories with him that we did, and that we have those kind of memories. And, I was like, as much as it sucks, it's like, can you imagine if that happened like before Endgame? Like the fact that he fought cancer for 4 years, and was able to hang in there long enough that we actually got to see, somewhat of, a conclusion to the story arc of that character. Which obviously is not really important in the long run. Like, if somebody dies and your first thought is like, oh man, but we don't get to see what happens to the movie, it's like, it's obviously more important stuff than that. But again, that character in that story is hugely important to people. And so to be able to have all those moments with him that we did have and, just get that joy and that hope and that inspiration that he gave to all of us is, sucks that it ends here, but, I'm just grateful for all of it that we do have.
I actually am really curious, because I just watched them over the weekend, but what you're talking about, that moment of them being the first ones to come out of the circle, something that I was thinking about while watching Infinity War that really like sort of solidified stuff for me is, and Mike and I have chatted about this before too, because Mike is an Iron Man guy, I really like Captain America is the leader of the Avengers. Like he is like at his core sort of this like, but the beauty of the moment in Infinity War where they're all chasing towards the like the shield, and it's Captain and T'Challa are the first ones that hit that, where you're like, they are the same core of a character in terms of like leadership and heart and hope and just what they say in Black Panther, right? Like you're a good man and it's difficult for a good man to lead, right? But yeah. that at its core, I think, is what makes these movies and this franchise so aspirational, is because you do have, like you're saying, like he is this aspirational type character, and that is the beauty of, I think, what at least I look for in sort of escapism is like what is going to hold us up and show us a light in humanity and like what we want to be at, and I think that it is very intentional. The more that you're saying that, obviously it's intentional, they made the movie, but so I think it's so important that he is the one that comes out of that, because Doctor Strange has a certain amount of sort of knowledge and all this stuff, but it wouldn't be like, you can't put him there, and Thor was already out, and it just makes sense that it would be T'Challa. Like he's the most important person that wasn't in that, like wasn't alive and wasn't there, and I think that that's the biggest hole that they were trying to recognize. Anyways, thank you for that. It's just really interesting to sort of see like those moments through a different lens, for sure, because I think it's so important just how T'Challa and Captain work off one another and sort of reflect the important parts of the Marvel universe. So
I think the thing that T'Challa symbolizes in that moment, and the reason why he has to be the first one that we see, because we hear Sam first, but he comes out after that, right? Like he comes flying out in circles as everybody else is, as all of the other portals are starting to open. And I think like it is so important, because a lot of what you just said, Amanda, where it's like, that's it, if Cap has an equal in another character, it's T'Challa, right? Like they're cut from the same cloth. But it also it cues the audience. The last time that we saw that character, he was leading that army, right? And in his movie, it's like he battled and he won that like twice over he wins that right. And that loyalty of that army, and we know that the Wakandan soldiers are all awesome and badass and all of that sort of thing. So when we see him, it's yeah, with Okoye and Shuri right next to him, it's a signal to the audience before they even realize it, like, oh, we just leveled the playing field. Like T'Challa, because if Sam comes out, you're like, okay, it's another superhero, right? And it's like, well, okay, are 4 of them really going to make a difference? It's like, oh yeah, okay, well, I guess if Doctor Strange can get back, if you know, like if some of these other characters can get back, but by seeing T'Challa first, by seeing the Black Panther first, and the way that he kind of just nods at Cap, it's like he's nodding at Cap to say like you did it, you held it for long enough, and now we're gonna finish it, right? Like, and it's one of those things. Like, look, it's not a secret to anybody listening to this podcast. I think that sequence is one of the greatest sequences ever put to film. Like that, from the moment that Cap tightens that shield on his arm, ready to die.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So
ready
good.
to die fighting Thanos.
The cinematics of that scene and how far apart Thanos and Captain are, and there's nobody else, and you just got this big
yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've rewatched the clip on YouTube of like people that filmed that scene in the movie theater on opening night, so you can hear like the live audience reaction of people experiencing that for the first time, because that's honestly one of my favorite movie going memories ever.
Oh yeah. It's incomparable.
And like I said, I mean, part of it is, you know, again, having that experience of me and my sister being there, and just that shared joy of seeing Black Panther come out, but also just, you know, the culmination of all these years of stories in the MCU and seeing all these characters come back together. It was just, you know, it's nuts.
Yeah, there's no other character I think that could have come out of the portal first and had the impact that he does. And it's also, I'm like, it also lends to a build up towards like one of the other most important characters, which is funny because they appear for the first time in the same movie, which is Spider-Man. Like, I think when because then you get it cuts from them to sort of all of the portals opening up, and then it cuts to the portal with Doctor Strange, the Guardians, and then Spidey comes out last, right? Yeah. Of that portal, and the mask comes off, and you get the reveal of Tom Holland, and that's one of those. That's like the second place that people cheer. I find like in those videos is that they lose it for T'Challa, and then they lose it again for Spider-Man. Yeah. And then it's a lot of like sustained cheering, and then when Giant Man bursts out of the ground, there's like another like yes. People just like lose their minds of like cuz that is the perfect moment of Doctor Strange going like, is that everybody? And Wong goes, what, you wanted more? And it's like, oh no, there is more. Like one more thing. So good. It's so good.
Did I know that he was called Giant Man? Because it's so funny and great, and I don't know if I knew that. You don't know?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, like he's Ant-Man,
that was
but
the big version. I know, Giant Man. It's funny. Oh.
There's several names for that character when he can upsize as opposed to shrink, but embiggen, as Miss Marvel would say. But yeah, and then just throughout that sequence, I mean, like I think that Black Panther has one of the standout moments when he gets the gauntlet, when it's like because it's a great moment of that calls back to Civil War when they're fighting, and Hawkeye is fighting T'Challa, and he's like, hey, we haven't met, I'm Clint, and T'Challa goes, I don't care. and then in Endgame, it's Hawkeye's got the gauntlet, and he's about to be overtaken, and T'Challa like lands, and he goes, Clint, give it to me, and then he takes it, and he does like his basically like a football run with it, right? Like we go through that sequence of passing the football. But he gets a really extended sequence of going through, and he charges up the suit, and then he does the slam, and it's all very cool. And then he hands it off. He hands it off to Spider-Man, right? I think he does.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's so good. It's so good. All the characters get such great moments, but I don't know, man. There's something about Black Panther that he like just stood above so much, and like Black Panther, like the movie in terms of the plot, there's like the Wakanda aspect of it where it's like we've got the royal ceremony stuff that's very unique, but in terms of like the third act, it's the same third act as every Marvel movie where you have to fight like every solo movie, every first solo movie, or in the instance of Iron Man, all of them, you have to fight the dark version of yourself, right? You have to fight Shadow Link and defeat him, and then reabsorb that lesson into your own character. That's how superheroes work. That's the mythic storytelling of it. But not just because of Chadwick Boseman, because I think that Michael B. Jordan deserves a great deal of credit for his performance as Killmonger. But I don't know, like I'm more invested in that than I am in a lot of the third act superhero fights.
No, I completely agree. And like I was saying earlier, like, you know, as much as I love Black Panther, like it's not my favorite movie, and I agree with some of the criticisms of it, that it does get a bit formulaic at times. And my favorite parts of that movie are not the special effects or the action scenes or really the overall plot. Really, it's the character arcs of T'Challa and Killmonger. It's the performances of really the entire cast. I mean, Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan kind of stand at the front of the line, I guess. But, I mean, top to bottom, that whole cast does a phenomenal job. But then also just fleshing out this world of Wakanda. And like I talked about earlier with the Black Panther being like a symbol and a character that people not necessarily relate with in terms of like, oh, hey, that's me in my daily life, but he's very much like an ideal to aspire to. And Wakanda's kind of the same way, because it's very much rooted in elements of modern Black culture as well as, you know, traditional African culture. I mean, I love that you've got like the skyscrapers with like the grass hut roofs on them, you know. But the fact that it is very cultural and traditional and rooted in, you know, its roots and its ancestry, it also is super technologically advanced, and it's this thriving, you know, probably the most technologically advanced civilization in the world. And so that too is something really cool for, you know, again, like, and I've never had this experience personally, but people that live in like, you know, poor areas or, you know, when you think of like the oppressed parts of like Black society in America, and looking at that as like, man, that's what Black culture could be. That's what our community could be. Is just a really powerful symbol as well. And so, and that of course combined with just like the costumes and the music and the production design, they just did a phenomenal job, you know, breathing life into this fictional world that I think was something that people really needed to see in this day and age. So yeah, I agree with you. I mean, those are my favorite elements of the movie beyond just the plot and the fight scenes and the typical Marvel stuff. It's those extra details and just the world building that makes it really pop.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that we could go on forever and ever, but I don't know. I think that is there anything else that you wanted to cover, Kyle or Amanda?
I don't think so. I mean, like you said, there's, you know, we could talk about this forever, but I think we've kind of hit on all the big things.
I do think at the end of the day, one of the things that's so great about having this community and this podcast and is speaks to your tweet that you were talking about, Mike, is that everybody has something that resonates with them. And I think that stories are what makes the world go round, and people that tell those stories are important for different reasons to different people. And I'm really grateful that people feel like they can share and that they can connect with people that are storytellers. And I just hope that people will continue to do that and continue to share stories that inspire them and be grateful for people like Chadwick Boseman and, you know, lots of amazing artists that have also inspired us and left us too soon. And so I'm just, again, it's just a really cool community to have stories that resonate with people, that they actually want to talk about it, and that they connect with the people that have told those stories. I think that that's really important. And it also inspires more people to become storytellers, because I think that that's important. I think that it's important to share what you can, share your talent, and make the world a little less dark with whatever gifts you can. So
yeah,
I'm grateful for him.
I think that is the biggest thing, and I think they when we talk about that legacy, they Chadwick Boseman leaves behind. Yeah, Black Panther is pretty cool, right? Like, I think we all agree Black Panther is pretty cool, but I think that the important part is going to be that inspiration. It's his performance and his storytelling with that character, amongst the other great performances that we have from him. They're gonna inspire a whole generation of, I mean, like primarily, I think we talk about the young Black kids that are gonna look at that and go, hey, I wanna do that. I want to grow up to be the Black Panther. I want to grow up to tell stories like this. But I think a lot of people, like, I think that just across the board, and I think that that's one of the most important parts of that legacy, is that with that character, he managed to very specifically highlight a culture and a possibility and a potential, like you're talking about, Kyle. Like, when we look at Wakanda and we look at that world that's great. I don't think that we would believe the skyscrapers with grass roofs and stuff, like with that aesthetic. I don't know that you would buy that without the incredible performances from the actors, and like, he is the most important part. He's the keystone in that, right? Because he is the lead character. He is the king of Wakanda.
Same with him running around in a suit that explodes purple energy.
Yeah,
like, that's
purple,
not the part
black and purple pajamas, right? Just like a cat. Yeah, like it's a big leap. There's a lot of trust that the audience has to put in that character, and he makes it easy. He makes it effortless. That, like, yeah, it makes sense why this guy dresses up as a Black Panther, right? Like, it's logical. And I mean, like, the sequence in the ancestral plane, right? Like, that we haven't even talked about that. Like, that's a hard sell. And yeah, you're in a series of films where you've got, like, Doctor Strange and you've got the Guardians of the Galaxy, so we're kind of already in for that. But you've got him coming from Captain America: Civil War, which is very grounded, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, and now a scene from The Lion King, right? Like, which is sort of the joke that everybody makes.
Yeah.
But very much like to me, that those sequences, because there's two of them in the movie, like, those are two of the best sequences in the film. Like, that stuff's incredibly moving, when it could be really, really silly and could take you out of it, right?
But
yeah.
And it contrasts to the third Ancestral Plane movie, like, sequence in that with Michael B. Jordan's, like, Killmonger's Ancestral Plane.
Yeah, you're right.
And the contrast for that again, at the core of that movie, is the grounded reality of modern conversations about race and diversity and inclusion and what community means to bringing up children that feel like they belong or feel like, right. I think it's important, and the contrast is, I think, part of that too. So,
yeah, for sure.
It's great.
Yeah. I mean, I think last thing I want to just say about Chadwick Boseman, like, I mean, we talked about obviously his strength just to fight the battle that he fought, but even hearing all these tributes pour in from people that he worked with in the MCU and all that kind of stuff, like, one thing that really becomes apparent is that, like, he in a sense was that character, like, off screen, like, especially not only like the hero king of T'Challa, but then also like a legend like Jackie Robinson, and people talk about, like, just this sort of strength and dignity and grace that he brought to all these performances, and it, like, wasn't fabricated. Like, that was who he was, and so it was easy for him to imbue his characters with that, which I think makes him just that much more of a role model to aspire to. Just I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, just
It's about him.
It was,
It's about him as much as it is about the character, I think, and that's important.
yeah, definitely, and he really is like he's just as much of a hero to aspire to as these characters that he plays. And again, not just because he did all that while fighting cancer, which is amazing in its own right, but just because of who he was as a person and his just you hear people talk about the things that he cared about and the way that he interacted with people and treated people and just his passion and his curiosity as an artist and I won't get into all this stuff, but just stories that people have shared about even things that he contributed to on Black Panther. Like initially they wanted him when he was introduced in Civil War to just have a British accent because that's just kind of the typical thing in Hollywood, right? Like when somebody comes from a foreign country, like, oh, you just give them a British accent because it sounds kind of exotic, but like everybody's heard it before and they can understand it. And he was like, well, no, if he's supposed to be the king of this African nation, and then I'm going to get like a solo film where we're in that African nation, like it needs to sound like he's from Africa. And, he kind of pushed for that and challenged some of the boundaries even of what they were trying to do with his characters. So just, it sounds like, again, I not to talk like I knew him or anything, but just sounds like he was a really special and unique talent and person. And, just sad that he's gone.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. I think that was a great conversation. I think it's a difficult one, right? Like how do you eulogize someone that you don't actually know? Mm-hmm. But I do think it's like I said with that initial tweet, like not letting people gatekeep that and tell you that your grief over it is invalid in some way. It's like if you feel it, you feel it. Mm-hmm. And so a conversation like this, I think, is a really, really great way, a really healthy way, a really respectful way to process something like that. So I would encourage people to just have conversations like this with your friends about how his art affected you, because like if you're listening to this podcast, it did. I'd be very surprised to hear from somebody who's like, yeah, I didn't really like the MCU or Black Panther. It's like, okay, well, you're listening to the wrong podcast. Like that's definitely our community. So and obviously you can engage with us on social media and that sort of thing. Kyle, you want to let people know where they can follow you, where they can find you all over the internet?
If you guys want to follow me personally on Twitter, I'm at Slim Avery, and I'm one of the hosts of Star Wars: The Saga Continues here on the Thunderquack Network. You can find us at Star Wars TSC on Twitter, and our website is starwarstsc.com. And just appreciate you guys letting me join in for this episode. Like you said, Mike, I think this has been, for me personally, this has been a really good way to just kind of process this. I feel like all weekend, I've been thinking about this and just feeling kind of bummed about it. And, not like completely heartbroken like you would be if you lost a family member or something. But, again, it's weird when it's somebody that you don't know, but just feeling kind of, I felt like I had this kind of cloud hanging over me, and it's been good to just kind of get some of these thoughts out. And, I've had a good time. So.
Cool. Well, we really appreciate you coming on and being a part of the conversation. It's great. That's it for the episode. That's it. We're going to take next week off, and then we'll be back. We'll actually be back in a couple of weeks. We've got another guest coming on. I don't know, Amanda, if you're going to join Matt and I, but Matt Campbell and I are going to do we're going to fan cast the MCU X-Men. In an upcoming episode. So I look forward to that. It's a conversation that he and I have been like sort of preparing for a while. So it's something that
I might let you roll with that then. We'll see.
Yeah. But I'll give you the sneak preview. John Boyega as Wolverine. That's the hill I'm gonna die on. I'm gonna bang that drum until they cart me away. In a straitjacket, but I think he would be awesome. So we're gonna have a whole conversation about that. I'll explain why I think he would be really great in that role, because I think that a lot of people would feel that that's counterintuitive compared to Finn. But we'll have that. We're gonna have our lineup of the X-Men, and then we're gonna each cast those characters. So look forward to that. But until then, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Stay safe, everyone. Wash your hands and be kind to one another.
Wakanda forever.
Follow the Thunderquack Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by searching the Thunderquack Podcast. You can support us in 3 ways. First, by heading to the podcast service of your choice and leaving a rating and review. Second, by going to store.thunderquack.com to pick up some merch from your favorite podcasts. And last but not least, by heading to patreon.com/thunderquack to kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get cool rewards like early access, ad-free episodes, and extended episodes. The Thunderquack Podcast is the official podcast of thunderquack.com. Head to thunderquack.com to discover more